Welcome to the Howell Business Beat, where we delve deep into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, innovation, and success stories, bringing you the latest insights and strategies to thrive in today's competitive business environment and business landscape. I'm Janelle Smith, president of the Howell Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Dianne Santhels. Welcome, Dianne.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
All right. And we are happy to have you here as well as our guest today. We're going to take a little bit of a different shift and focus and speak to one of the Chamber's largest and most signature events that we have here in Livingston County, the Michigan Challenge Balloonfest. So we are very excited to welcome Phil Klinger, who is our competition director. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So, Phil, we're really excited to have you here today because coming to the chamber, I had no idea how much was involved in hot air balloons. And I say that because everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. They're beautiful. They're magnificent. They're wonderful to look at. But it is so much more involved than an inflation and all of these other things that go along with it. So this is an exciting year for us at the Chamber because we are celebrating 40 years with the Michigan Challenge Balloonfest. And that is quite a milestone. And I thought, and Dianne thought, it would be fascinating to have you on to share a little bit more about who you are, how you became involved in the sport, and what your role has been with the Michigan Challenge Balloonfest. So before I go any further, I'm going to hand it over to you and just let you introduce yourself, share a little bit about what you do, and go from there.
All right. Well, I actually got my first exposure to balloons when I moved to the Battle Creek area, and there's a big festival here in Battle Creek. I moved to the area in 1993, and I took my first balloon ride that year. Just bought a balloon ride from a local guy, and I really got the bug from that, and then knew that it was something I wanted to do someday. And in 95, I actually crewed in the World Championships, which was hosted here in Battle Creek, and saw the competitive side of ballooning, which is, kind of what the Michigan Challenge is about that a lot of people don't know, but that competitive side of the sport really hooked me, and took me a couple years to get my act together and save up for a balloon, and I started flying in 97. So my first flight as a pilot or a student pilot was in 97, and got my rating that year and my commercial license in 99, and now it's pretty much a full-time occupation for me. So between the events and running the events and flying balloons for passengers, and also I do repair and maintenance. Between all those things, that keeps us pretty busy.
That's amazing. I love it to hear that it was just, like you said, something that you kind of caught this bug and then you really jumped in and went all for it. So I love we can have people on the show to talk about how they've pursued their dreams and their passions, and that's amazing. It's very, very cool. So we've worked together, I think, since I came to Howell. And I've learned a lot along the way. I still don't know. I feel like I just know tip of the iceberg. But one thing that you did mention and sharing with us is that a lot of people don't realize that the Michigan Challenge Balloonfest is a competition and that this is a competitive sport. So can you share a little bit more about the competition side of things and what your experience has been with that?
Yeah, so I actually flew for the first time in the Michigan Challenge in 1998.
Woo,
And
wow.
yeah, it was a while ago. As it happened, I was became good friends with one of the founders of the event. Not because of the event, but outside of the event, became friends with them. And that's kind of how I got introduced to the Michigan Challenge. The competition, do you want me to talk a little about the details of the competition, what it involves?
Yeah, all of the above.
Okay. It is funny because most people. The best I think my sister once said after I got my first balloon, she's like, "What do you mean you got a balloon? You don't buy a balloon, you just see them." And so it's funny because you can kind of relate that to the challenge, because most people think about the challenge and, okay, cool, it's pretty balloons floating around. But there is so much more to it. The challenge is a competitive event. We have an entire team that actually manages that competition. So we have a safety officer, we have a weather officer or meteorologist, we have scoring teams. It takes a pretty big group to operate what is really almost 100% behind the scenes for the spectators. And a competition in a hot air balloon, it's not the first one to get there. It's not the first one to take off, like many types of competitions. But it's actually the skill of the pilot to fly from a location that may be their choice, may not be their choice, to a specific point. And we actually put a large X out in the middle of a field or a large yard somewhere. And the pilots have to try to fly over that X and drop a competition marker onto the X. So, you might fly 5 miles. And to do well, you need to be within inches, not feet or miles. So that's the gist of competition. But there's all sorts of variations to it. So, we stack some of those different things up, different types of tasks, different locations, and you got to fly from point A to point B to point C. And at the end of the day, whoever can navigate the winds the best gets the best score. Most people think we can steer a balloon, but the only steering in a balloon is finding a different wind current. And sometimes they're not there. So it's all about really the weather and navigating Mother Nature to get you to where you want to go.
Mother Nature. That's a great segue, but go ahead, Diane.
Well, when you say that, when the wind isn't there, that's where, and again, I'm like you, Janelle, I feel like I kind of know something, but then I really don't think I know much of anything.
Right.
Because that's where like the fire comes in place. So that's what kind of helps you find that wind stream or give you that little push that you need to keep going.
Yeah, well, yes and no. So the burners actually, we use the burners or the flame to heat the air inside the balloon. All that does is change the temperature. So we heat it up, it makes it hotter. We don't use it for a little while, and the balloon starts to cool down. That heat's held in there with a really thin layer of fabric, so it cools off pretty quick. So that temperature change is all we're doing with the burner. And that temperature change either makes us go up or come back down. So to find a different wind current, you might go to a different altitude. So you might climb up from 500 feet to 1,000 feet, and the wind might be slightly different there. And if we're really adventurous, sometimes we go to 6,000 or 7,000 feet to find that different wind.
That seems really high.
My personal record is 18,000. So
18,000.
So what is the danger zone? Like, how far can you go up before you're kind of getting into that gray area of like, no, this is pushing the limit too much?
That's interesting. So during the challenge, we're operating under a waiver from the FAA. It's something, again, that our team does that allows us to fly in, kind of congested or do the mass launches, fly lower over the festival site than what we would normally be allowed to do with the standard FAA regulations. So under that waiver, we have a ceiling. So during the challenge, we don't fly over 8,000 feet. But there is a point where you do need oxygen, and there's a point where, as a pilot, it's your responsibility to know when you personally are susceptible to that oxygen deprivation, because as you go up, there is less oxygen. And some people can be affected at as low as 5,000 feet. At 14,000 feet, the pilot is required to have oxygen. So as a supplement, you can't breathe very well above that. And at 18,000 feet, the burners don't even work very well.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, that is really wild.
When did you do that? Was it a specific competition, or was it just for fun?
No, it was just for fun. It was a planned, planned event, like kind of call it an adventure flight or something, where we planned this because we've got to carry the oxygen. You've got to carry aviation oxygen. You've got to have the extra equipment in the balloon so that you can actually do it. It is actually a legal requirement above 14,000 for the pilot to have oxygen. So we had to do some prep work for that flight. And interestingly, even after flying to 18,000 feet and coming back down, we actually landed 5 miles from where we took off. We didn't actually go very far.
Wow.
So that's like your personal best. So are you are you that competitive that you're going to try to at some point scale that or break that record? Or is that, again,
that gets a
sketchy
lot
area?
more complicated. So 18,000 feet is, when I say above that, is positive controlled airspace. And you can't enter that airspace without some additional special aircraft equipment, such as a transponder and things. So for a balloon to do that is actually really difficult because you also need a auxiliary oxygen supply for the burner itself, because it won't burn very well higher than that. So I don't have any aspiration personally to top the 18,000 feet. We also do, we do what we call long jump, which is a distance flight, which is just another type of adventure flight. Not this past winter, but the winter before, a couple guys from over by Howell, Michigan, crossed Lake Michigan in a balloon. And, again, that's quite a feat that you can do, but, that's a distance flight. So, my personal distance record is 103 miles. Normally, as during the challenge, we fly maybe 5 to 10 is pretty normal.
That seems really, really adventurous to go over the lake. Because what is your plan B? Like, if you have to land in an emergency situation, you've got nothing but water. I was going to say that. That's a little too adventurous for me.
Beyond that, I mean, are the weather patterns a little more unpredictable over large bodies of water like that?
In the winter, typically, when we get the right type of weather to do something like that, it is actually fairly predictable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd hope so.
And much more stable than in the summertime, where you could get storms and things like that. So that's when you would do that if you were. But other than taking some survival equipment with you, there really isn't a plan B other than hopefully the Coast Guard can get to you before you freeze to death.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that being said, I do wonder if there's a specific personality type that maybe is drawn to this.
I would say for the most part, yes. What's interesting though too is, people think that hot air balloons, crossing Lake Michigan, yeah, that's a dangerous high adventure type of activity. But a normal balloon flight is actually the safest form of air transportation that there is. You're actually much more likely to be endangered in a vehicle driving somewhere than you would on a balloon flight. And it's funny because nobody will hesitate ever to get in a car.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But people are typically a little hesitant to get in a hot air balloon. And it's like completely the opposite for risk factor. So.
Well, I'll take that into consideration going into this year's festival.
Well, getting back to the competition side of it, what are you working towards? So you're earning points, or what is that? Ultimately, what is the goal with that?
Yeah, so each task or each target that we do, there is a formula system based on how well all the pilots do that calculates a score for them. So each task, they could get up to 1,000 points towards the overall competition for the Michigan Challenge. So if we do, say, 3 or 4 of those tasks on Saturday, and maybe 1 on Saturday evening and 3 on Sunday morning, then those points are pooled together to determine who's the champion of the Michigan Challenge. And then not only does it go towards the challenge, then we do operate, our operations works underneath the Balloon Federation of America to then utilize those scores from the Michigan Challenge, go into a national ranking system. And that national ranking system then works for the whole year, and pilots earn their way into the national championship based on their average score for the year. Get to the national championships and you finish well there, then you could potentially go to the world championships.
How many people typically compete at the national and world championships?
Nationals is typically around 50. It used to be larger, but it's a cost equation, right? The more pilots you have, the more expensive it is. So they kind of limit. Yeah, exactly. A little bit. They kind of limit the nationals to right now about 50 pilots, give or take. The World Championships is a lot different. The organizers don't have as much cost for that because it's a FAI Class 2 event worldwide, which is the organization that governs kind of aviation for the entire world, the FAI. And for that competition, there's no prize money. They don't pay for anything, basically. You're there on your own dime to compete in the World Championships. At that one, it's based on the number of countries that enter and how many pilots they have. There's a formula, how many maybe pilots they have and that kind of thing. to determine how many spots each country gets. Typically, the United States gets about 8 spots in the Worlds, and usually there's around 100 balloons.
Wow. Have you ever competed at Worlds?
I have not. Unfortunately, last year in the 2024 Worlds, which was in Hungary, I missed the cut by 1.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you going to try again?
So close.
That is very painful.
We'll see.
Okay.
It's I was there though. I did end up going and helping another pilot for the week. So I've been to the Worlds in Slovenia and Hungary as helping crew for another pilot, and 26 will be in Poland. So the World Championships is every 2 years.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, our intern's from Poland. She's actually there right now. We have the hookup.
Yeah.
Field trip.
Battle Creek, Michigan has actually hosted the Worlds, I believe, more times than any other location. We've had it, I think, 3 or 4. So.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
and I was going to ask
that.
how that how it's hosted, and even like nationals. Is that something that they rotate locations, or is it pretty
standard? They do. So national championship rotates every 3 years. About a year and a half to 2 years in advance of that rotation change, you have to put in a bid to the Balloon Federation of America. This is what we can provide. This is what we want to do, and try to essentially earn the nationals to come to your location.
Something to aspire to.
Yeah.
It was on the tip of my tongue, and I thought, gosh, do I even throw it out there?
Why not?
I don't know.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah. No, it's quite different than running just a weekend competition. So.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I am sure of it.
Amazing amount of logistics to it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So maybe we'll go to one first.
Yeah.
Well, field trip. We can go visit Rosalia.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
And speaking of logistics, people, again, they come for the weekend. Pilots show up and they fly for the weekend. Well, of course, your team there at the chamber, as well as my team, starts preparing a couple months after the previous year's event.
Yeah.
So we're working on the prep all year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, usually I think we email you in like end of July, and we're like, all right, do we have dates yet? Yeah.
So there's a lot of work that goes into it, just to get ready for it. And, not just from the operations side or what we do and the FAA and, submitting paperwork and all that kind of jazz, but also from your event planning side. I mean, I can't imagine, I'm involved with the balloon side, but not so much in the festival side, but there's a lot to the festival side too.
There's a tremendous amount to the festival side. Dianne knows.
Yes. It's a phenomenal event. It's one of those that I think the greatest gift is just being able to see it all come together. Because like you said, you're planning it for so long and you're always trying to elevate and enhance. So you always want to bring in a couple new and exciting elements to it and to just see it all come together. But we are so fortunate to have just a beyond amazing committee that really steps in, and their whole heart is in this event, and they really give of themselves, their time, their talents. And I mean, to see it all come together at the end and just be able to be there with everybody, it's exhausting. Until you experience it, you can't really put words to it, but it really is. It's so much fun. And to be up that close to the balloons, there's just pure magic with that. Until you have that opportunity to see them close up like that, you really, seeing them up in the sky just doesn't compare to being close on the ground and just being in the action.
It's really hard to find somebody there that's not smiling.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And it's really, those core memories, right? It's fun for me, I think, to talk and speak with people who are coming into the event, and, the number of people that say to me, oh my gosh, I've been coming here since I was a kid and now I'm bringing my kids. And so it's just that generational family summertime event for some people. I mean, they look forward to it year after year. I know we do.
Well, yeah. And it's true. It is a generation that, it follows you. I've lived here all my life. I've gone to it since I remember the first year they had it. And then to be able to experience it through your kids' eyes, and then to be able to experience it through their children's eyes. It's just, it's just such a feel good. You just watch the smiles of the people out, out on the lawn watching the balloons. And it's just really, it just speaks to your heart.
Well, and to Diane's point, we do have some different things planned this year, being the 40th anniversary. We are bringing in some really exciting entertainment. We're going to be having laser light show both night, balloon glows, lots of music. There's a whole festival component to this, as well as the logistics. But we wanted to give an opportunity to share on the logistics side, because you can share and have a lot more details and knowledge and expertise on that piece of it than we do. So it's really great to hear it straight from the source. And beyond the competition side, I did want to speak to just a little bit was the weather component and the challenges, what you guys logistically are looking at in weather. I mean, sometimes it can be like, I know last year, for example, it was absolutely beautiful every day for our festival, but it was a real struggle to get balloons off the ground. So, a lot of, people don't realize how weather impacts balloons and how fickle it can be.
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting. I've been involved with the challenge for quite a few years, and we've had some rough years with weather, and we've had some just unbelievable years. One in particular that I recall from a few years ago, on the operations side, we start studying all that stuff in advance. And, a lot of the forecasting technology is just amazing. And I actually have an actual meteorologist on staff that helps us with weather. Going into the event, I think Thursday, I was concerned we weren't going to fly at all the entire weekend. And lo and behold, that year we flew every flight.
What year was that? Was that 20?
It was 19. That was
2019.
I would say it was probably around 18 or 19. Yeah. And I just my advice to people that might hear us today is don't put too much faith in those forecasts. It might show rain on Friday. Oh, I'm not going to go on Friday. But sometimes that forecast with rain is some sprinkles on Friday morning, and it's beautiful Friday night. So, there's a lot of detail that goes into that weather that we study. And again, we don't make that decision, so people can't rely on those forecasts. We don't rely on them either, even though we're studying stuff, until the very last minute. We make the decision to fly about 30 minutes before we actually fly. So, and what we're looking for in that is we're looking for, of course, light winds on the surface. But sometimes there can be light winds on the surface, but it might be 30 mile an hour at 500 feet. It's not real common, but that's another condition where it looks pretty, it looks nice, but we have to think of the safety factor, especially when you put almost 40 balloons in close proximity. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. You've got the precipitation factor, the wind factor, convective air, which is basically vertical air movement, that we're looking at all those factors to determine. So generally winds under 8, that's a good sign. And we don't want to see a forecast that would have thunderstorms in it because that means the atmosphere is very unstable. Sometimes with rain in the forecast, not such a big deal. Thunderstorms, of course, that year we flew every flight. There was thunderstorms in the forecast all weekend, and we flew every flight. So again, the best thing to do is for people just to go and experience what there is to experience there, and there's a decent chance you're going to see balloons. So.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you providing that insight because I think we saw a little bit last year too. I mean, it was Space Cowboy did the cold air inflation, and it was crazy just watching just of what felt like to us a very light wind just really take a hold of that large shape balloon. So,
well, and that's we brought up shape balloons. So we do have other shape balloons this year. That's something new that we're bringing in, but they are massive.
Yes.
I had no idea with Space Cowboy.
And that's a whole different challenge than a regular balloon, but that's a good example. The Space Cowboy, when he was trying to inflate, that little bit of wind, and I've flown at 65 mile an hour before, and it's no big deal.
Phil, you're beginning to scare me.
Yeah, you're just kind of.
I'm just not.
For somebody so mellow, I had no idea you were into such extreme things.
I am really seeing a different side of you, Phil.
What's interesting is if the balloon's going at 3 or 65, it's no different. It feels absolutely no different in the balloon. Wow. The only change is how fast the ground's moving. So the key is the light.
You're not supposed to look down.
Cameron's cracking up right now. I love it.
That's crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, we're really glad to have you with us, and we're really looking forward to an exceptional 40th anniversary of the Michigan Challenge Balloonfest, welcoming so many pilots to experience this with us and our entire community. I know our Balloonfest committee, as Dianne mentioned, is just always year over year just unbelievably dedicated to seeing this event go off, and just really, they do relish in the joy that this brings to the community and the spectators and everybody that comes out to see the magic of what Balloonfest is. So thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to Balloonfest weekend coming up on June 27th,
28th,
and 29th. Awesome. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks,
I will
Phil.
be there.
Stay safe.
Yes, please stay safe. No balloon rides until then.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.